Welcome back to Movie Recaps. Today I will share with you a sci-fi horror movie from 1964. Spoilers ahead. Watch out and take care. It is 1968. The world is a deserted place. People are lying dead everywhere. Community church displays a message. The end has come. In an abandoned house, Dr. Robert Morgan wakes up by the alarm clock as it strikes 6 a.m. He gets up thinking to himself, another day to live through, better get started. It has been 3 years since he was left all by himself in the whole world. This started in December 1965. He gets up every day and marks another day he survives on his self-made calendar. Today, it is the 5th of September, 1968. He goes out of the house and checks the garland of garlic hung outside the main door. He smells them to see if they are any good, and goes to the garage outside. He checks the oil in the generators and fills the empty one. Then he opens the garage door and there's a dead man lying in front of it. He kicks the body to turn it and sighs to himself that the world is empty, dead, and silent. The soliloquy continues as he says that their numbers are increasing every day. The stronger ones feed on the weak ones and leave them for the pit. He walks through the ruined house as he makes his way to the radio. He pours some tea for himself and tunes into the international frequency. He speaks in the microphone twice. It's KOKW speaking.
KOKW calling.
But there is no response. He switches the transmitter off and gets up unimpressed. He looks at the broken mirrors and thinks to himself that he needs more. Apparently, the vampiric creatures can't stand their reflection. Also, they have a repulsion to the pungent smell of garlic, so Dr. Morgan has to change the garlic garland on the door.
This garlic's lost its pungence.
As he keeps thinking to himself how there was a time when eating was pleasure, but now it was just to stay alive, he takes out some garlic from the pantry. He thinks that the leftover garlic is no good and he should get more. As he finds a toy doll, he feels gloomy and throws a can furiously. But then he thinks to himself that he can't have the luxury of anger, as anger fades the power to reason, and that's his only advantage over these creatures. He marks a map where he left off yesterday. He thinks to himself, he needs to find out where they hide during the day. He killed 11 of them yesterday searching from Madison Street to 31st Avenue, and more than half of the city is yet to be searched. He marks the area he has covered and moves on to shape a wooden stake. The soliloquy goes on as he admires the perfection of the stake. It is wide enough to keep the flesh apart so that it doesn't seal back. He considers that they want to kill him and want his blood, yet he feels squeamish. He fills a bag with wooden stakes and goes out of the house. He hangs the garlic garland back and picks up the dead vampires outside his house. He puts them in the trunk of his car and drives off. He realizes he is out of gas, so he will have to make one more stop. On the way, there are many more on the sidewalks around him, and he thinks that he would take them too, but his car was out of gas. Parked in the middle of the road, there's an oil tanker. He gets out of the car to get fuel from it. As he reaches an abandoned part of town, he puts on a mask and throws the bodies into a big smoky pit, throws a gas tank and a lit piece of wood. A big explosion occurs and the bodies catch fire as the clouds of smoke lift into the air. He stops by the ruins of a supermarket and goes to the butcher section to get the fresh garlic. He gets a big basket full of garlic. The vampires are repelled by their reflection in the mirror, so he has to get those too to replace the broken ones on his door. He stops by at a mirror shop where all the mirrors are intact and gets a few mirrors. Then, just like a typical day, he hunts for them hiding in the dark buildings. He kills them with the stake and burns them in the fire pit. He leaves the bodies on the road because he has to get home before dark. An hour before sunset, he goes home and prepares new garlands of fresh garlic and hangs them outside the front and back door along with the mirrors. It's time to spend the 12 hours of night before the sun comes up again to drive them back to the darkness. As soon as it gets dark, the vampires gather around his house with wooden planks and try to get in. Dr. Morgan plays jazz music to blur the noise of their smashing. He tries to open a bottle of wine, but soon gives up. Frustrated, he throws the bottle away and dozes off on the couch. He is woken up by a nightmare when it's already morning. He quickly gets up to start his routine. As he puts the wooden block into the carpenter machine to make a stake, he gets irritable. He goes out and drives a long way towards the cemetery. He goes to the cemetery church and lights the candles. there's a big white coffin. He sits beside the coffin and says, "I miss you." He falls asleep sitting there when suddenly he wakes up. It's already dark. He gets worried as the vampires would be all around by now. He runs out of the church. The zombies are all around. He briskly pushes them away to get to his car, which is surrounded by them. He pushes them away and drives back to his home. The leader of the pack of zombies around his house shouts, "It's Morgan!" and all of them move toward his car. He runs down some of them with his car and uses a mirror as a shield to get into the house. He manages to get in the house and boards the door. As the zombies continue to try to break in, they keep saying his name, "Morgan, Morgan." He lights a cigarette and, sipping on wine, he plays movies of his family. His wife and daughter are in the movie. There are scenes from a birthday party. As the scenes from a circus play, Dr. Morgan starts to laugh at the donkey kicking the Joker. He laughs hysterically, which soon turns into sobbing. He flashes back 3 years to a birthday party. He's making a movie of his daughter Kathy and other children playing in the backyard. His wife, Verge, is standing next to him when he asks her to pose for the camera. Soon, his fellow scientist, Ben, enters with presents. Morgan's daughter runs toward him saying, "Uncle Ben, Uncle Ben." Ben gives her presents, and as she goes off to play, Ben shows Morgan a half-torn piece of newspaper. The headline reads, "Plague claims hundreds," and the subscript says that it could be airborne. Dr. Morgan says casually that it's just a theory. Ben is annoyed by his casual behavior and says that he should remember that theories are the beginning of the solution. Verge reads the paper and asks if it could be true that the disease is airborne. Ben replies it could be, but Morgan dismisses it. Dr. Morgan says that he doesn't believe in theories that sell newspapers. He is a scientist, not an alarmist, and finds it hard to believe a universal disease. Ben is called out by Kathy to play with him. Verge asks Morgan what's causing the plague, to which he replies that it is a bacilli bacteria which hasn't been seen before, in such a way that it can't be destroyed by any known processes. Their daughter calls out to them to cut the cake, so Verge goes for her. A few days later, the benches and the backyard are empty as Morgan gazes at it through Kathy's room's window. Kathy isn't well. She sleeps disturbed in her bed as her father fixes the mosquito net on her bed. He goes to his room where Verge is lying in bed but awake. He asks her if the wind woke her up. She says it did, but she isn't in good shape either. Dr. Morgan tells her to rest as she is sick, but she thinks she's only tired. Verge goes to Kathy's room and wishes they could find a vaccine for the plague. Dr. Morgan asks her not to send Kathy to school that day. She asks Morgan not to go to work as she's scared. But Morgan says he has to go as it is very important for him to go to the lab in these circumstances. At the lab, Dr. Robert Morgan reports to his supervisor that he has observed that these bacilli multiply very quickly and feed off each other. His supervisor tells him that it is only their lab that's left working on the virus, so they should keep working until he tells them to stop. Ben comes to the lab. He asks Morgan about his findings. As Morgan briefs him about how it's a highly contagious virus, Ben asks if he thinks vaccine is the cure. Morgan says they can do what Ben suggests if he isn't on board with the vaccine idea. Ben gets jittery and says that more and more bodies are being burned in the big fire pit every day, and asks if Morgan still believes that the dead are not coming back to life by the plague. Morgan ignores his question, but Ben continues asking why are they burning the bodies instead of burying them. Dr. Morgan replies that it is a better way to stop the spread. Ben isn't satisfied and asks why are the infected people tired during the day and active at night, and why are they scared of the sunlight? Dr. Morgan gets annoyed and asks if he wants them to believe they're vampires. Ben strongly replies, yes, if the stories are true. Dr. Morgan says that the vampire stories are made up by people who are out of their minds. He shows Ben the bacilli found in every infected person's body. Ben says that vampires may carry the germ, but Dr. Morgan disbelievingly asks him to get back to work. At home, Dr. Morgan watches a news broadcast on the TV. The newscaster announces that the plague has turned into a national disaster. He plays the message from the governor. The governor advises that every infected individual must be reported and burned if they die. There should be no public gathering under any circumstances. Dr. Morgan switches the TV off, and when Verge asks if there's an update, he says no.
No, nothing new.
Next, Kathy can't see. She keeps asking her mother to help her. Verge wants to call the doctor, but Morgan tells her not to, as the doctor will report it and she will be taken away. She stands a chance if she's not reported. She says it might not be the infection, but Morgan interrupts her to tell her that blindness is one of the symptoms. He tells Verge that he has to go to the lab, but strictly advises her not to let anyone in the house. As he is leaving, he sees someone wrapped up in clothes and dumped into a truck as a woman screams across the street. Dr. Morgan stops by Ben's house to pick him up. Ben has put garlic and a mirror on his front door. When Dr. Morgan knocks, he asks who it is before opening the door.
Who's there? It's me, Ben. We're late.
Dr. Morgan replies that they're getting late for the lab. Ben opens the door and says angrily that Dr. Morgan can work on his theory and Ben can work on his. He refuses to go to the lab and shuts the door. On the way to the lab, the only vehicles on the roads are the trucks full of bodies and police bikes patrolling them. When Dr. Morgan gets to the lab, no one except Dr. Mercer, the supervisor, is there. Morgan asks Dr. Mercer if mankind is going to be wiped out before they find a cure. Dr. Mercer also believes that there have been strange happenings that science can't answer. Morgan is desperate for the cure. Dr. Mercer calmly replies that as long as both of them are working on the solution, there is still hope. When Dr. Morgan returns home, he sees a truck leaving. He quickly goes in the house where his wife is sitting in the chair. He runs to Kathy's room, but she isn't there. He asks his wife, when did they take her? She replies, when she called the doctor. Morgan tells her that he warned her not to call anyone, but she says she was in a very poor condition, so she had to. When Morgan asks if it was the truck that just left, she says yes. So he quickly drives to the fire pit and anxiously asks the driver if it had come from Market Street.
Did this truck just come in from Market Street?
The driver replies he doesn't know, so he goes to the masked men who are dumping the bodies. He grabs the next body they are going to dump, but they shove him out of the way. He cries that he wants his daughter back when the man replies that there are many daughters in there, including his own. He returns home disheartened. The streets are abandoned by now. Morgan is making himself coffee when he hears his wife screaming, "She can't see!"
Mom, I can't see!
He runs to her room and finds her dead. He puts her body on the bed and promises that he won't let her go into the pit. So, he wraps her body in some sheets and drives off to a faraway place. He digs a grave and buries her. When he comes back home, as he pours himself some wine, he hears someone trying to open the front door. He goes to check, and as he opens the door, Verge's ghoul appears. It babbles something and comes toward Morgan. Morgan shifts back from the memories to the present day. The vampires outside are led by Ben's ghoul. They keep on saying, "Morgan, we're going to kill you."
Morgan! We're going to kill you, Morgan!
The next morning, Morgan gets up before his alarm rings. His car is shattered. The soliloquy continues as he thinks to himself that Ben is dull if he thinks that destroying his car is a good way to get back at him. He goes to a showroom and chooses a hearse over a comfortable car. When he reaches home, he sees a dog in the neighborhood. Desperate for companionship, he tries to catch it. The dog runs away and Morgan follows it.
Come back here!
He is determined to find him, even if he has to search every inch of the city.
Where are you, pal? Come here!
He doesn't find the dog, but makes an interesting discovery. There are bodies of the vampires staked, but the stakes are made of iron, while Morgan uses wooden stakes. He takes one of the stakes home and imagines there are other people alive. He wonders where they are hiding and tries to communicate with the transmission once again, but doesn't succeed.
This is Robert Moore. If somebody can hear me, answer me. For God's sake, answer.
Suddenly, he hears the dog. He carefully opens the door. The dog is hurt and lying in front of his door. Morgan, ecstatic with happiness, brings him inside, bandages him, and starts talking to him.
Gonna be all right.
As the night approaches, Ben surrounds the house with his team of vampires. As they start smashing the windows, the dog runs to hide under the table. Morgan tries to calm him down when he finds something strange. He quickly goes to see the dog's blood under a microscope and finds the weakened germs. He has found the vaccine, but it's too late. The dog dies, and Morgan buries the dog with a wooden stake impaled in him. When he is done, he sees a woman there. He runs toward her, but she gets scared and tries to flee. Morgan calls out to her and asks her to stop as he won't hurt her.
Wait!
At last, he catches up with her and tells her that he wouldn't be out in the daylight if he were one of them.
I couldn't be out here in the daylight if I was one of them. You know that they can't come out until sundown.
He tells her to choose to stay there to face the vampires or follow him to his house. The woman follows. Back at Morgan's house, the woman acts strange when she sees herself in the mirror. Morgan makes her coffee and she introduces herself. Her name is Ruth Collins. She tells Morgan she had a husband and asks him about his family. Morgan tells her he was married too and had a daughter. Suddenly, he gets up and brings out garlic. Ruth can't take the pungency of it and tries to move away. Morgan tells her that she is infected, as garlic intolerance is a symptom. Ruth says she has been feeding on scraps for days, so she has a sensitive stomach. She tells Morgan that it was him who tried to drag her to his house, so she tries to leave. Morgan stops her from going and offers to make her dinner. The night has come, and the vampires are banging the doors and windows as Ruth and Morgan sit on the dining table. Ruth doesn't eat and asks Morgan how he survived the plague. He says that his theory is that he was immune to the germs as he was bitten by a bat in Panama. Ruth feels unwell and runs to a room. She can't see herself in the mirror. Morgan comes to the room when Ruth is trying to inject herself with something. He asks, "What was that?" She says that it was fabricated blood with vaccine. Morgan says he was about to cure her, but now he needs the truth.
I was going to cure you.
She opens up and tells him that they are building a society of people like her. The blood and the medicine feeds the germs to keep them alive, and the vaccine stops it from multiplying. These people were infected, but alive. Morgan was a monster to them who kills them during the day. Ruth tells him that she was sent to spy on him, to see if he knows any more than they do, and to keep him in the house while they come to kill him. She aims a gun at him, but Morgan doesn't get scared and asks her to shoot.
Why don't you go on and use it? Get it over with. Use it. Get it over with.
Ruth falls unconscious. Morgan transfuses his blood into Ruth. As she wakes up, she asks him, what is he doing? He gladly tells her that he has found the cure. The antibodies in his blood has cured Ruth. He brings a mirror and garlic to prove it to her. She doesn't get scared of either. She asks Morgan to run away as her people were coming to kill him. Morgan refuses and tells her that both of them could save the rest of them. They won't be alone anymore. He goes to his lab to show the proof of his antibodies under the microscope when a vampire manages to enter the house. He attacks Ruth. Morgan kills the vampire, but the new people arrive. They come with cars and guns. Morgan runs to escape them. They spot and chase him. Morgan exchanges gunfire with them and picks up tear gas grenades from a police station armory along the way. While the tear gas delays his pursuers somewhat, Morgan is wounded by gunfire and retreats into a church. As he stands at the altar, one of his pursuers finally impales him with the iron stake. In his final moments, Morgan denounces his pursuers as freaks.
Freaks. I'm a man. The last man.
Ruth reaches the church and cradles him.
Robert.
Morgan declares that he is the last true man on Earth, and all of them are afraid of him.
They were afraid of me. They were afraid of me.
I didn't know.
As Ruth walks away from Morgan's body, she finds a baby crying in the spectators. She pats the baby and assures the child that everyone is safe now.
We're all safe now. All safe.